Have you noticed how Meghan cries, but there's never a tear? The makeup is never smeared. Everything is so rehearsed.
They told us it was a love story. Two people who broke free from a cold institution, craving nothing more than peace, privacy, and the freedom to speak their truth. But now that carefully constructed narrative is starting to fall apart.
Absolutely. What we're really now seeing is that both of them, having posed as the victim for so long, are really the aggressors.
And behind the glossy Netflix scenes, the viral interviews, and the sympathetic headlines, something far more calculated is being uncovered. According to royal biographer Tom Bower, one of the most feared investigators in the industry, Harry and Meghan didn't just manipulate the truth, they weaponized it.
But at that time, William didn't know that Harry and Meghan had already recorded their poison for Netflix.
And what's being revealed now is enough to turn even their most loyal supporters into skeptics. What if the most high-profile royal exit of our time wasn't about escape at all, but about strategy, branding, and betrayal? Let's rewind. In the early days, Harry and Meghan were the golden couple. He was the troubled prince who served his country and longed for a simpler life. She was the Hollywood actress who brought sparkle, diversity, and warmth to a famously rigid monarchy. Their wedding captivated the world. Their love seemed genuine. And when they stepped back from royal duties in 2020, the story practically wrote itself. Two outsiders choosing love over obligation. But there were cracks from the beginning. Reports of internal conflicts, quiet exits from palace staff, carefully worded public statements. At first, these were dismissed as tabloid noise. But according to Bower, these weren't just growing pains. They were red flags.
All the stuff that we heard today about Charles lying, about William screaming and shouting, was in the can, was being edited.
And the real story had only just begun. Because what followed wasn't silence. It was a media blitz. The Oprah interview, the Netflix docuseries, the book deals, the speaking tours, and with each appearance, the couple leaned harder into the victim narrative, royal racism, press harassment, family betrayal, Meghan tearfully recalling her mental health struggles, Harry accusing his brother William of screaming matches. Their fans cried with them, their critics sharpened their knives. But behind the emotional footage, something sinister was happening. And according to Bower, the most damning detail isn't what they said, it's what they left out.
Because she's an actress, she's got no stake in this country. But Harry, a former army officer, betraying the army, his country, his family, his father, dumping on the king, the future king too, and also on his grandmother. That is extraordinary.
That long walk outside Windsor Castle during the Queen's funeral, the one that looked like a fragile reconciliation, it was already a lie. By the time they shook hands with mourners, the Netflix episodes were already filmed. The most explosive accusations against King Charles, William, and the institution itself were being edited in secret, and no one in the family knew. You probably think this is where the story ends. You're wrong. This isn't just about a documentary, it's about a pattern of deception stretching back years, and the explosive truths that are now surfacing. Here's where it gets really messy.
I think Diana, well, I know, we all know, Diana would be shocked that we're sitting here today discussing her son as an outright liar, as a man who conspired with Meghan.
According to Tom Bower, what we're seeing isn't accidental, it's orchestrated. While Harry and Meghan stood beside Charles and William during moments of grief, they were sitting on hours of filmed attacks, footage accusing the family of racism, betrayal, and cruelty. Bower claims that long before the public ever saw a trailer, Meghan and Harry had already packaged their version of the truth, carefully edited, emotionally manipulated, and ready to sell to Netflix for tens of millions. What makes this worse? The family had no idea. William, according to insiders, had no warning that his brother was about to publicly accuse him of screaming during private talks. Charles was left blindsided by the allegations of lying. And all of this, Bower says, was hidden deliberately. even while they were mourning the late Queen together.
The whole description she does of the Portland hospital, the birth, that was completely fabricated. We all know the first interview was given to CBS. We all know that she never intended to go to the Portland hospital. She intended to have the baby at home. We know that they deceived the public about the birth data and time of the whole event.
But that's not even the most disturbing part. This isn't the first time Harry has allegedly pulled a move like this. Bauer points out that Harry did something eerily similar at Prince Philip's funeral. Behind closed doors, he'd already filmed confessions blaming his father for his mental breakdown. Then he stood in St. George's Chapel, side by side with the very people he would later criticize on international broadcasts. There was no warning, no hint, just smiles for the cameras. And silence. According to Bauer, that level of deception isn't just calculated, it's ruthless, and he doesn't let Meghan off the hook either. As an actress, he says Meghan understood exactly how to deliver emotion, how to cry on cue, and how to rehearse a message that would trigger maximum sympathy. But while she may be a newcomer to the royal world, Harry isn't. He was a soldier, a royal, and a public figure who knew the weight of his words. And yet, he turned on the very institutions that raised him.
That was untrue. She then admits that it was untrue. But her lawyer says Meghan didn't lie. Well, extraordinary how the whole thing is unraveling.
Wait, there's more. According to Bauer, even the birth of Archie was used as a tool for narrative control. The official statements around the hospital choice, the birth date, the circumstances, much of it, he says, was fabricated or deliberately misleading. Then there's the infamous letter to her father, Thomas Markle, that Meghan once claimed she never shared with her biographer, except she did. In a sworn court document, Meghan admitted to collaborating with Omid Scobie after initially denying it. Her lawyer tried to spin this as a mistake, saying Meghan didn't lie. But to Bauer and many others, that explanation falls apart under scrutiny. These aren't small missteps, they're repeated, strategic omissions that point to something bigger. Something much harder to explain away. And here's where things really take a turn. Remember the claim that Archie was denied a royal title due to racism? It dominated headlines, sparked outrage, but Bauer and constitutional experts say that's simply not true. Under royal rules, Archie wasn't entitled to be called prince unless Charles became king. The same applied to dozens of other royal children before him, so why push a claim so easily debunked? Because it worked. It made headlines. It built sympathy. It fueled a brand based on rebellion and injustice. And now that sympathy is unraveling.
They never named them, except they did name Jason Knauf, the man who in the end exposed Meghan's lies, and of course they're furious with him.
But hold on, this is where it gets insane. Because Tom Bauer says we're not just dealing with a few white lies or emotional exaggerations, we're looking at a full-scale narrative machine. According to him, the Netflix series was never about telling the truth. It was about controlling the narrative. And the way they did it? Genius, if not disturbing. Meghan and Harry filled the documentary with friends, lawyers, and academics who appeared to be neutral voices. People who seemed like outside experts lending credibility. But dig a little deeper, and you'll find that most of these experts had direct ties to the couple. PR reps, longtime supporters, personal friends. Bauer calls them stooges, planted to present a false sense of balance.
What they've done very cleverly is they use their friends, their lawyer, academics who have always backed their side of the argument to seem to give a balanced picture. It's as if you are watching a balanced documentary, but in fact, all of those people are stooges.
And when you strip away the emotional music and clever editing, what you're left with, he says, is 6 hours of propaganda. Well acted, well produced, but stunningly hollow. Take Lucy Fraser, for example. In the series, she confidently claims that people inside the palace deliberately tried to bring down Harry and Meghan because they were becoming too popular. It sounds explosive. Except there's no source, no name, no proof, just one woman making an unchallenged claim on Netflix framed as fact. That's what Bauer finds most dangerous, not just the misinformation, but the way it's disguised as journalism. In traditional documentaries, multiple viewpoints are presented, conflicting accounts are weighed, and audiences are given room to decide. In this case, Bauer says, it was all illusion. Every scene was curated to evoke emotion and erase doubt. And the truth? That was optional. And yet, despite all the serious accusations they made, bullying, racism, mental cruelty, there's one glaring absence: evidence. No emails, no direct quotes, no names. The one person they do call out, Jason Nauf, a former palace aide, is someone who later exposed inconsistencies in Meghan's legal case.
They are plants for Harry and Meghan. I mean, this friend, Lucy Fraser, I think her name is, she's some sort of PR. She's stating as categorical fact, right, that there were internals, as she calls them, at the palace who had decided that Harry and Meghan had become too popular, so they had to bring them down. Who has told Lucy that? Harry and Meghan.
And that's when the mask slips. The series ends by stating he is the liar, not them. No counter-argument, no verification, just a closing message designed to bury dissent. According to Bauer, it's a level of control even political regimes would envy. He draws a shocking parallel to Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's propaganda minister, saying the manipulation in the Sussex series would have left him impressed. That might sound extreme, but Bauer's point is this: when you blend half-truths with high production value, and you silence opposing voices, you don't just mislead the public, you rewire what they believe. The unraveling doesn't stop there. Bauer brings up the infamous New York car chase, described by Harry and Meghan's rep as a near-catastrophic pursuit by paparazzi, but NYPD officials, taxi drivers, and eyewitnesses told a different story. No danger, no high-speed chase, just a narrative that, once again, didn't hold up under scrutiny. These aren't isolated incidents, they're part of a larger pattern, one where emotional appeal replaces hard facts and public trust becomes collateral damage. Here's where the facade truly starts to collapse. According to Bauer, the final, unforgivable betrayal isn't just about the royal family, it's about Meghan's own. The narrative of abandonment, of being alone at the altar with no support from her father, was one of the emotional cornerstones of her story. But Bauer says that, too, was meticulously crafted. Meghan's father, Thomas Markle, wasn't a deadbeat. He wasn't an absent parent. He paid for her education, her acting classes, her car, and even helped fund her first home. He was present, he supported her, and then, suddenly, he was cut off. Why? Because, according to Bauer, he no longer fit the image. Meghan was rebranding, and her real-life family didn't align with the new origin story being built for the cameras. Even more disturbing, Harry reportedly never once visited Thomas Markle, not even after the wedding fallout. Instead, Meghan's mother, Doria, was pushed forward as the supportive parent. But Bauer believes there's something much darker about that pivot, something we still haven't been told. You think that's bad? Keep listening! Bauer claims Doria's presence in the Netflix series was carefully staged. Every pause, every tear, every quiet expression of pain. It looked authentic. It felt raw. But behind the scenes, Bauer says, it was acting, and Meghan even admitted it in a past interview, bragging that she can cry on cue. Watch closely, he urges. You'll notice something odd. The emotion is always there, but the tears never fall. The makeup never smears. Every breakdown is perfectly lit, perfectly composed. It's not documentary, it's performance. And when the cameras cut away, the narrative continues. Meghan has said publicly that she felt lonely growing up. But school friends, teachers, and even her own archived speeches tell a different story. One where she credited her father with everything from moral values to her first activism campaign. So what changed? Bauer suggests it wasn't her memory. It was her strategy. And let's not forget the Queen. According to Bauer, the most shocking betrayal of all came not when Harry accused his brother or father, but when he implied that even Queen Elizabeth II stood silently as the family mistreated him. At the Sandringham summit, where the exit deal was being hashed out, Harry described his grandmother as passive, almost complicit. But what truly stunned Bauer was how Harry stood at her funeral, knowing full well what was already filmed, edited, and ready to release. The Netflix deal was done. The accusations were already in the can, and yet he played his part in the public grieving. That, Bauer says, is the deepest level of duplicity, a man pretending to mourn with his family while preparing to dismantle them on screen. Not even Diana, Harry's own mother, would have gone that far. And Bauer insists that if Diana were alive today, she would be horrified, not by the choice to step back, but by the way her son has chosen to burn every bridge behind him. The fallout has been brutal, and it's still unfolding. Public trust in Harry and Meghan has taken a nosedive. In the United Kingdom, polls show their popularity has collapsed to historic lows. Even in the United States, where sympathy once flowed freely, the tide is turning. Spotify quietly dropped Meghan's podcast after just one season, reportedly citing a lack of meaningful content. Netflix, once their most high-profile backer, is said to be cooling on future projects. The Archwell Foundation, their flagship charity venture, has gone largely quiet. Bauer points out that this isn't just PR fatigue, it's reputational collapse. Because when your brand is built on truth and healing, and that truth starts to unravel, everything else comes crashing down with it. And what's coming next might be even worse. Bauer warns that the Sussexes didn't reveal everything in their Netflix series for one simple reason: they needed new material to sell the book. Spare! Harry's memoir comes with a £20 million price tag, and Bauer believes that means the content has to be explosive. If the Netflix documentary focused on institutional racism and emotional isolation, the book, he suspects, will go after individuals. Camilla, Charles, even the late Queen. Think about that. The man who stood at Windsor Castle, head bowed, mourning his grandmother, may now be preparing to rewrite her legacy for profit. Bauer calls it unforgivable. Others might call it unprecedented. But one thing is certain, the book could torch what little goodwill remains. So what does all this mean? Is this the end of the Sussex brand, or simply the beginning of a darker chapter? That's the question Tom Bauer wants us to ask. Because in Hollywood, image is currency, and when that image begins to crack, when the truth doesn't match the trailer, the whole empire becomes unstable. Bauer doesn't think the couple are finished. He thinks they're regrouping, recalibrating, preparing their next move. But this time, he says, the public might not be so easy to convince. The curtain has been pulled back, the story isn't as clean, as pure, or as tragic as it once seemed. And as more evidence emerges, more voices speak out, and more timelines fail to add up, the illusion is breaking. So here's the real question. Now that the world has seen behind the scenes, will Harry and Meghan ever be able to step back into the spotlight without bringing the storm with them?